So I've been looking around for all this, and I've been trying to figure out when this Atlantic hurricane season is really going to start ramping up, because we've had a few systems. We've had Tropical Storm Alex, Tropical Storm Bonnie, and we've had Tropical Storm Colin, but generally by now we should have a couple more than that. So I was a bit curious, when is this actually going to ramp up? Sure, it generally starts to ramp up in late July or early August, but this year doesn't seem like there's going to be that much at first glance. Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Alright, so what we're looking at here, we're looking at the global sea temperatures. We're going to be looking at each metric to basically show you when this thing's going to really start, because what this tropical stuff needs, it needs warm water, it needs weak wind shear, and it needs moist air. Because if there's any dry air, then it's game over. But if we take a look at the global sea temperatures, like especially in the Western Atlantic, it's more than ripe for tropical development. Like, we're looking at 28 to 29 degrees Celsius and potentially down 40 meters deep. That's quite a lot of fuel for these things. Like, let's look at the Gulf of Mexico. We're looking at a huge area, even bleeding out into the Western Caribbean, at least 29 degrees Celsius. If we take a look at it closer, we're looking at some areas that are 30 degrees Celsius, which, for those of you in the United States, that's about 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and 29 degrees is about 84. So, yeah, that really does make sense. Shouldn't storms develop by now? Well, we have to also take a look at the wind shear. And even then, the wind shear is only concentrated in this area, and even most of the Caribbean, it's pretty neutral. There's pretty neutral wind shear for at least something to either be sustained or strengthened slightly before moving into better conditions for it. So if the wind shear is not the problem, the warm water is not the problem, then what is? Well, we have a couple of problems right here. First off, the air in June, in first 3 weeks of July, it's more dry than it should be. Like, the reason we don't see storms develop isn't because of the warm water. It isn't because of the wind shear either. It's actually because of how moist the atmosphere is in the deep tropics right here. And I've been looking at it, and this is a model run right here. This is a model run, and we're gonna go over all of this just to show you, because if we're looking at this was taken just 2 days ago, and this is not what you need to see for tropical development. Like, the air is too dry in a lot of the deep tropics. But if we go out a week, things start changing, and on average, the moisture starts to increase quite a lot in a bunch of the deep tropics. Sure, the Gulf of Mexico goes through some of this, but yeah, it's quite interesting if you think about it. And this is July 25th. Look how different this is. Like, let's go back to July 16th, right here, and let's go ahead and go to July 25th. Very noticeable change. And if we take a look at this, it seems like once the moisture starts going, everything else starts to go. Because if we also take a look at this, the winds are kind of more scattered and all over the place. Like, generally, if you want tropical systems, you want a nice flow of westerly winds in the deep tropics. But we're looking at stuff moving southwest, northwest. Like, it's kind of scattered. But if we take a look by the 25th, much more even. And this is what's going to start the setup for tropical development. Because what you need after this, you need tropical waves, and you need an area of low pressure. But if we take a look at the model, if we go further out, it really doesn't show anything. But at the same time, you can't predict storms 9 to even how far this goes 35 days out. You can't even predict storms that far. If you could, then you're a genius. But even still, if we take a look at this, and even though the moisture, it does dry up a little bit, the air does dry up, but on average, it's much better than it is now still. And if we continue to go back to it, by this point, the deep tropics, it's primed for development, essentially. The winds are there, the moisture is there. So, yeah, this is the reason we don't see tropical systems in June or July. The reason we don't see that is because the air is just too dry. We have plenty of warm water, and the wind shear, sure, it's really bad in June, but in the first week of July, in the last week of June, it starts collapsing. Like if we take a look at the 5-day HTML right here, we can show you at a slower pace how this goes. This is in the last 5 days, and you can see this giant amount of wind shear just collapse. And even though there's still this concentrated area right here, it looks a lot better for tropical systems. But the moisture just isn't there, at least not yet. And now we're going to go ahead and look at another dynamic for you. The main sea level pressure norm anomaly. This is the GFS ensemble model that we're using here, just for the context. And if you take a look at this, the high pressure really it's not there, but then it starts to just rapidly change. In the next week, actually, it goes from higher than average to way lower than average, and then it continues to do that in the deep tropics. And that's also a key element of first tropical system development, although there is some higher than average pressure right there. So yeah, you're not going to want this, and this is going to kind of fight back and forth through the last few weeks of July and the first week of August, but by the second week of August, it should look a lot better. And if we take a look at this, it does. Like, this is August 14th, and even though this is about 4 weeks out, this is a good metric. This is a rather good metric to take a look at, because if you're looking at this right here, this map, we're looking at lower than average pressures. And if we're looking at lower than average pressures, then we're looking at an area that's even better for development right there. So let's go ahead and take a look at this and let's see how this matches up, because if you see this blue, like, this means that there's not really a lot of low pressure going on, and the development's just really not there. But if we go about, like, even 5 days out, it's starting to improve itself, and we're looking at the main sea level pressures starting to dip a bit and become more favorable for tropical systems. And then if we take a look at it, starting in late July and early August, we could see a few low pressure areas start firing up here. Generally, if we're taking a look at, we need to pay attention to this one right here, number 4 right here. This is about 1,004 millibars right here. And eventually, it starts dropping right here. And if we look at this, and this is once again 2 weeks out, but this is just a metric to show you what tropical development we could be expecting. And this looks like on July 30th, it does appear that a tropical cyclone makes landfall in Louisiana, but that's not going to happen because just even though the wind shear is there and even though the warm water's there, just if we go back to the moisture for you guys, okay, this is it right here. Just it's not the best, so. So it's going to have some issues fighting with that dry air. However, if we continue into early August, this is where things get interesting, because more tropical waves start developing, more of them start picking up traction, and eventually things start to really get interesting. Like, take a look at this right here. This is what depicting a large tropical system right here, but once again, this is basically several weeks out. We can't predict this. If you are, you're a super genius. But this should tell you what the environment's going to look like. And if we cross-check it with the moisture anomaly, it checks out. It's a favorable area for development. The warm water is there in the Gulf of Mexico, and at least as of right now, the wind shear is there as well. But that's just now. That's a few weeks out. So you're probably wondering, Patrick, why are you talking about all this? Well, I'm trying to pinpoint when this thing's going to really pick up, because it usually starts to get more favorable around the 3rd week of July, and then it starts to develop more systems by the 4th week of July or 1st week of August. And I'm just trying to help you guys pinpoint what's likely going to happen. I mean, I can't predict storms this far out, but I can pinpoint when the conditions get favorable for them. And if we continue to take a look at this, if we continue to take this trip down, you'll see some more systems like that. Like, we're looking at more tropical waves that's starting to form up, and we're looking at more systems starting to develop. Like, this is an ensemble model, so this can be inaccurate, but this should. But if you take a look at the colors by themselves and compare it to what it is now, that should tell you how much better the conditions are going to be. This is August 6th. That was July 16th. That snap happens in a matter of 1 to 2 weeks. And the way I see this is that it really confirms my theory that it's going to be late July to early August that this thing's going to ramp up. I mean, it happens every year, but because there's been so few systems out in the Atlantic right now, people have been starting to question it, like, oh, are we even going to have a hurricane season? We likely are. It's just taking a while because the conditions just aren't right for that. So I'm making this video to kind of let you guys know what you guys could expect, like why we're not looking at more systems now and what we could be seeing down the road. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll update you guys as the situation progresses. Stay safe.